Yeah, so you guys have no idea who I am, but I've been obsessed with the Giants since I was 3 years old. So if I'm going to be watching them doing all this losing, well, we may as well talk about it, and you may as well listen if you happen to be here and happen to be interested. We can do this together. We have come down to earth a little bit from some of the enthusiasm from some of us from the preseason because we thought things looked a little bit different. Maybe this is just a really good Washington team, but again, from the Giants, we just saw more of the same. So Washington dominated us from beginning to end, and they just kind of kept letting us hang in it. They looked like they were playing week one football, and we looked like we were just playing bad football. So start of the game, we nearly get a pick by Cordell Flott. That would have been nice, a nice little start for us finally getting some interceptions. Washington gets a false start, dropped by Ertz, bails us out, end of the drive. That first drive really looks like the rest of the game for Washington. Again, obviously anyone who watched the game, we could barely move the ball and we couldn't punch it in. So our drive was basically a quick 3 and out. So the next drive, Washington really puts together a really good drive. They're doing a combination of it. They're setting us up with the run, and as you're watching the game, especially early on, it just looks like we just cannot stop the run, which was the original concern everyone had about this Giants defense. We're thinking, hey, we've got a great pass rush. We're going to be fine. They're sort of softening us up with the run, and then they're just killing us. They're killing us the whole game. With the soft zone, Washington gets it inside the 15-yard line, just throwing, running and then carving us up, in our soft zone. And they're just pounding us. They get us a TD throw to Ertz. Thing of note, McFadden looked hurt, got hurt, got out of the game. Doesn't look like he's going to come back anytime soon, getting carted off. Washington looks like they're kind of in a rhythm. And this is looking early like this might be a different Washington team than the team we faced last year. I think a lot of Giants fans got used to being able to beat these Washington teams. Maybe felt like the team that they watched didn't look that good last year because in the games that we played against them, we hung around and they were not able to punch it in the end zone. We were doing a bend and don't break defense, especially in that first game. We feel like we should have won that game. We didn't. And so I think a lot of Giants fans are thinking, is this a really good Washington team, or are we just gonna, are they gonna they're gonna regress a little bit, and are we gonna be able to take advantage this year when we couldn't last year? Well, this year, in some ways it was more of the same with Washington, but they were able to punch it in early on us. Second drive, we look like we're in trouble. But then we do have a long 8-minute drive, but it shows us some of the problems early on with the team. So, Tracy gets a nice 6-yard run to get us set up for 3rd and 4. There's a great first down to Wan'Dale Robinson with an out route throw to him. Tracy gets 6 yards up the gut. Neighbors, so there's like a little scattaboo moment that I think are probably getting fans excited, just like scat, scat, scat. So there's a nice block by Scattaboo, gives Russell just enough protection. Neighbors gets the first down for about a 25-yarder, and then Scat gets a tough 5 yards. I think that was a throw to him in the flat, and he just sort of bullies his way, and it's starting to make, I'm sure some Giants fans are thinking a little Mark Bavaro, a little Jeremy Shockey, and reminding us of why we're getting a little excited about Scattaboo. And then I think they try to reward him by giving him the ball, and he just gets stuffed. We got stuffed at the line quite a bit. It's been a problem for us for years. The offensive line looked like it was getting bullied every time. Every chance the offensive line had a chance to show some toughness, they got bullied. And quite frankly, wonder why Saquon Barkley got up and out of there. It's getting really tiresome. This has been going on. Even in 2011, when we won the Super Bowl, our line was rated very low in how we performed. So we're coming up on 15 years now. It's really the same story. We can't win in the trenches, especially our offensive line, and we're so reliant on Andrew Thomas. But that was a lot of the story in this game. Every 3rd and short yardage, any opportunity to just pound the ball, we just failed miserably. We get it. We move the ball. We get it to about 1st and goal after a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty on the first down to Robinson. So we get the ball, we move the ball. There's Neighbors get stopped early in the goal line. And then Theo Johnson had not Not a good game by Theo Johnson. It started to make me want to see a lot more Daniel Bellinger. Every opportunity Theo had, so he would get the ball and just start running and lose the ball, thinking about the run after the catch, before the catch. And then Russell, Russell Wilson, it's a strange thing because I think he just doesn't have a team around him. And he actually showed some legs, like nothing like magical like he used to have, but enough to he gave us a tough 8-yard run to get us to, I think it was around 4th and 2. And he gives us a tough run. He does fumble, recovers his own fumble, but you kind of saw what Daniel Jones had been going through. And by the way, good for Daniel Jones. A little side tangent. I was never in the, oh my God, I'm completely against Daniel Jones camp. And if just this week alone, is any of an indication, I think what John Mara said a few years ago was completely right, that we did everything wrong for Daniel. He never had an opportunity. And, I didn't watch the game, but it sounds like from a number standpoint, he had a great game for Indiana or for Indianapolis. And, Russell, what I saw from Russell was a lot of what Daniel had to go through. And in this case, he got in trouble, got a big run for 8 yards. Big first down or big opportunity that gave us a choice, 4th and 2. And this is, again, where we really, really start to break down offensively. It's been like this for quite a while. 4th and 2. I need to see this play again because I believe Russ put the ball right in Neighbor's hands and he dropped it. I don't know. I need to watch it again. It looked like a drop. Maybe it was a missed throw. Maybe it was a breakup. It looked like a drop to me. But we get bailed out. There's a big illegal hands to the face penalty. Gives us a new set of downs. And then, anyone who watched the game, we could see the story from there. We get the big break. Then we get a gadget play that goes nowhere. It just looks like a joke. Scatterbo gets stuffed. I wrote that down many times. Scat stuffed, Tracy stuffed. It's in my notes the whole way. And then there's a throwaway in the back of the end zone. There were a bunch of those today. And then I was kind of pissed because we went for it on 4th and 2 before, and now we're 4th and short again. And Dable kind of does this thing where he just throws his hands up in the air and he gives up. I've had enough. I give up. And I was upset at the time, but to a degree, I don't blame him for not going for it. You give your team 8 chances to punch it in the end zone, then they can't do it. And that was the story. And there's clearly no confidence in the offensive line to be able to push the defense. They don't do it. They can't do it. It was pretty brutal. And the story of this game is Washington playing first week football, making mistakes, us not really stopping them. And every time we had a sliver of an opportunity, our offensive line really didn't come through for us. So next drive for Washington, there's Washington, like I said, some key misses by them. Debo gets a big drop, maybe a bit of an overthrow, maybe a little too hard. Brady kind of blamed Daniels, but it looked like a drop to me. Brady sounded a lot better on the broadcast than I had remember him early last year, for what it's worth. But second and 19 at the 50, there's a bit of a drop. Then there's a big miss to McLaurin, and this clearly was a miss. It looked like a big overthrow to McLaurin, who had a big game. Again, opportunities for Washington to finish us, but we get the ball right back. Not much of note there. We get a quick 3 and out, and again, it's like Singletary gets stuffed for 2 yards. He does get a nice run, and then we do this thing. It's 3rd and 1, and I really haven't understood this about modern NFL and coaches. By the way, people always question this. This is apple cider vinegar distilled, though. There is water here. It's mostly water. I'm not drinking straight apple cider vinegar. But we split Singletary out wide, and it's an empty backfield. And I always kind of question this because why are we taking away the threat of the run entirely? It's 3rd and 1. I'm not crazy about splitting Singletary out. I like the threat of the run in this situation here. And again, there's no threat at all. Russ doesn't have much time, doesn't have anyone to throw to, and he does this weird sidearm throw to Wanda Robinson, which goes nowhere. And again, as a Giants fan, it's weird because you're down like one score at this point, and it feels over. like the whole way, this never feels good. It only feels like we might be able to just hang around and pull off a miracle at the end. But even then, there was nothing crisp offensively or quite frankly, even defensively. I know we didn't give up a lot of points throughout most of this game, but it still didn't look good. It looked like we couldn't move the ball. It looks like whenever we did move the ball, we would get stuffed, and it looked like Washington could move the ball all day, and we just never got stopped. So next possession for Washington, and I wrote in my notes here, it's not looking good. And one of the things I'm thinking, and look, it's early, it's the first week, but we're not seeing much of this pass rush, and then all of a sudden Burns gets a sack on the screen, and this is the start of one of the big problems for us all game. Every single time we'd get a sack, Washington would be in trouble. They would answer right back. So there's an immediate first down to Debo, and again in a soft zone. I don't know. Look, I'm not a football analyst breaking down plays like Giants Nation is always going to do this way better than I can do it or will do it. But it just looks like the defense, there's nothing creative there. It's just a hey, bend but don't break, rush 4, soft zone, and they're just going to keep picking us apart. Nacho gets a penalty, and it just looks like we're about to fall apart. Big 3rd and 7 throw to McLaurin. And then I might have note here, like the first time I heard Carter's name, I think it might have been a holding penalty. But then it might have been number 8. I'm not sure. I only watched it once in the broadcast. But yeah, Burns had gotten another sack. Then they get the first down to McLaurin. Then Krosky Merritt gets the run. Easy run. Sweep to the right for a touchdown. So now, I mean, like, again, we're down a couple scores, and it's feeling like we absolutely need to respond here. We get a 4-yard run to Theo Johnson, 5 yards false start, gives us a 3rd and short. Wilson gets a sneak. Tracy gets stuffed a couple of times in a row. Again, I wrote that a bunch of times. Illuminor gets an offsides penalty, 3rd and 18. Williams sacked with nobody to throw to. So, nothing really noteworthy there. Wasn't a 3 and out, but wasn't a really great drive anyway. So next possession for Washington, something I noticed, nice tackle by Nick Jones on the punt returner. Could have put them in much, much better position. This is the final drive going into the end of the half. And again, it was more of the same. We got a sack by Tibbs. And then, it was 2nd and 20. Washington responds with a 9-yard screen to Debo. Debo then picks up a first down on 3rd and 11. It was about a 21-yard gain. And then they're moving the football and moving into scoring position. And, they don't save a timeout, as Brady pointed out in the broadcast, and they get intentional grounding and they bail us out. So we're only down 14-3. But this is a 14-3 that does not feel like a 14-3, like, oh, we're down 2 scores, we're getting the ball back and we're in it. This feels like game is over. And it weirdly felt like, and this was the weird optimist in me, it weirdly felt like Giants Titans a few years ago. And I remember Jimmy Johnson basically saying, yeah, this is kind of a year for the Giants. It's they're not going to do well this season. They're going to get through this season and hopefully build for something for the future. I'm paraphrasing. And then the Giants come back with an awesome second half. They win the game. They get the big, the big touchdown, 2-point conversion with Saquon Barkley at the end. And, that's when we start calling Brian Daboll Day Balls. And, we have a fun season. Very fun, by the way, very, very fun season. But the second half for us in this game doesn't look anything like that. But we get the ball back and you're hopeful. You get a little reset, and first play looks good. We get a nice quick throw to Neighbors for the first down, because that was another thing you're kind of thinking And you see Neighbors is frustrated all game because he's really not getting the football. And, it's a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, it looked like Wan'Dale had a good game. The question is, I heard a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson today. And again, look, they're keying in on Neighbors, so that's gonna give Wan'Dale opportunities. But sometimes you just got to get the ball to your playmakers. And so we go right to Wan'Dale on the quick throw. Tracy gets 5, then he gets stuffed. Wilson gets sacked 3rd and 4, and so I think it was another, not really a 3 and out, but 1 first down and then 3 and out. And again, it's really early, but just like moments like those, you're just watching this game and you're just like, this is over. Like, this is already over. We're only down 2 scores. We've only had 5 possessions at this point, but it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like there's, any juice for this team. Especially offensively, but even defensively, we always looked like Washington was bailing us out. And they did. They bailed us out multiple times. They should have destroyed us. So their next possession, we stop them. And again, we get them in trouble on the 2nd and 19. And then Ertz gets a 9-yard catch in the soft zone. And again, they move the football every time. Every single time we get them in like 2nd and long, 3rd and long, they get these big chunks of yards right back. I'm watching this thinking like, why isn't Abdul Carter more involved? And that's look, I know it's only week 1, but a lot of like, where they're talking, about Abdul Carter, like he's the next Lawrence Taylor, and really hyping him up and really seemed to no-show today. And they were, every time I said, let me look at what Carter's doing, they were using him, to spy, which I understand because of who Jaden Daniels is, but it just never looked like, they used him to pass rush or anything interesting. I would have to go back and watch closely for the full game to say, how true that is, but it just never seemed involved. And, if you're a Giants fan, you're all excited about this big pass rush. And really all you saw was Brian Burns today. It was just Burns and that was it. In terms of the rush. Later, Drew Phillips got a really big play. We'll talk about that. Ertz gets what might have been a catch or was close to a catch, but really wasn't a catch when you looked at it on the replay. It got overturned. And again, we're just kind of hanging in there. And again, I would say we weren't really hanging in there because it didn't feel like we made many key plays defensively. In terms of key moments, it was Washington just being a bit out of sync. The next possession, the big note, we do, and it's funny because at this point I'm thinking, where's Abdul Carter? He does get the partial punt block. But then, Singletary gets stuffed on first down. We take a shot to Neighbors. It's well covered, but it's also a little bit underthrown. But I'm kind of liking this because that was the other thing. I'm thinking, where are these moon balls by Russell Wilson? Like, let's loosen the defense up a little bit. Let's do something. So we throw, so we take a shot. We're missing, but you're going to see the second half. We're going to take a little bit more shots, and even though we don't really score, it does seem to give the offense a bit more life. But then again, Theo Johnson, this was not a day for Theo Johnson. Theo gets another drop in the flat, who I think had open space. I don't know if it would have been enough for a first down. But it's just a bad look. Just not a good game for Theo Johnson. Every little opportunity he had, another drop. Yeah. So not looking good. I think that was another 3 and out. Let me look at the next drive. I don't have many notes on Washington. He does get another big, make a big 15-yard throw to McLaurin in the soft zone. Merritt gets a 5 yards. We get to Daniels on the drop screen. And 3rd and 5, incomplete to McLaurin. They challenge. The play holds up. Washington loses a challenge. Nothing terribly interesting there, but that was a good, a good defensive possession by the Giants. But at this point, like it feels like the defense is only going to hold up for so long, and the dam is going to break. And it's like we need some juice. And so this drive, it looks like some of that. It looks like there's a potential for juice here. So this is a big drive, our 7th drive. And we get to 4th and 1 after, Russ gets a throw when he's in trouble to Tracy. We get a quick throw to Robinson. We get to 4th and 1. My notes are a little scattered there, but we do get to 4th and 1. Russ sneaks for the first down, and it's funny because Brady mentioned he goes, this seems a little desperate by the Giants, but they should be, which is exactly right. Again, I make a note. Russ looks like he's okay running the football, and he's kind of in that Daniel Jones position where he has no choice. He has to run for his life, so he does a fake. He finds nothing, gets a 5 or 6 yards. Tracy gets a first down at the edge. And then we throw one up to Slayton. This is one of those things which it could have been a key moment, but our inability to score in the red zone makes me think this wasn't a key moment. But we get the throw to Slayton. Face pass penalty is missed. We didn't hear Slayton's name like all game long. And a lot of it's hard to tell. Is it just Russ just didn't have time for plays to develop? That's the only time I recall hearing Slayton. It's the only time I mentioned Slayton by name. Big hit. This was maybe the play of the day for us. The one thing that we may have had some juice and felt like, okay, maybe we could get in this. I think the most juice we had was that little Scatterboo block, and then a few yards, and then that kind of dies down. We fizzle out, in the first half on a drive in the red zone. But Russ takes a shot, floats it out for Neighbors, and he hauls in a big 20-yard grab. Then we get another play. Again, now the moon balls are coming. Russell rolls out, throws a big one to Neighbors. Can't haul it in. There's a 5-yard holding penalty. And that one, honestly, is a bit disappointing. Just because, it was an opportunity for a big play, but we only get a 5-yard holding penalty on first down. So, it really amounts, to not much. Defensive holding is really big, when it's like 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, but on 1st and 10, good on the defense. Take the defensive holding penalty because, why not? You rather get the defensive holding penalty than a touchdown to Neighbors. So in a way, good play for Washington. But we're moving. We're at the 35, and this was this was the drive killer. We get a 15-yard throw to Johnson. Theo Johnson finally hauls something in, and there's the penalty on Hudson. I didn't get a good look at it. I was writing down notes, but this was Brady had mentioned he didn't think it was much for what it's worth. But that was a drive killer. That penalty killed us. 1st and 10, another moon ball missed. Then we to Neighbors. Then we flip it to Scat on the shuttle pass for 7. Washington Wilson always looked like he was in trouble. 3rd and 13, ball gets batted down, and it's just one of those weird things where it looks like this should be a game killer. But Gano hits a 55-yarder, and we're down only 8. And it's just it's a weird game, though. I think any Giants fan knows that this was an 8. This 8-point game felt more like a 16-point game, an 18-point game. It didn't feel like a real 8 because it just felt like you just could see not only was the offense struggling to move the ball, whenever they did move the ball, they just short yardage situation, they couldn't do anything. Goal line situation, they couldn't do anything. Excuse me. And then on top of it all, and the defense, Washington had only scored 14 points and it felt like 30 points. Like it didn't feel like a real 14 because it just never really felt like the Giants got big stops. It felt like Washington was just missing a little bit here, a little bit there. A lot of our sacks came, in like first down, and then Washington would just get chunks of yardage, get right back in it. And we didn't really get a stop. Washington would usually, miss a pass here, a little overthrow here, a little drop there, penalty there, letting the time run out on the grounding penalty there. It was never feeling good. This whole game felt so Giants. We were thinking, I don't know. I think a lot of Giants fans were feeling a little bit of spark for this team. And this game felt as much like the last 10, 15 years as it has ever had. This was as Giants of a football game. And again, Washington should have stomped on our throats, and they didn't. Next possession. This is the one. We get a big play. This is the first. I don't want to say the first time, but this is when we finally do get a big, defensive stop. Tibbs and Carter stuffs Krosky Merritt on a run. 2nd and 14. Giants hold Ertz. Debo gets a catch for a few yards. Daniels runs on the play breakdown dive for 3rd and 1. So it's 3rd and 1. Is Washington about to move the football again? End of the third quarter, and Drew Phillips just comes up big. He makes a big tackle on Debo Samuel on the short pass, contains him. Again, the Giants, a lot, especially early in the game, the tackling did not look good. But Drew Phillips, I can't have any complaints about him. Big tackle, big play. Outside of a couple of Brian Burns plays, like this is the only time there was like a defensive player worth noting. Like, someone did something, and that was huge in the sense that again we're in a position where it is just a 1-score game, and again it doesn't really feel like we're in it, but that's football. So the optimist is thinking like this is football, and that's how you sometimes win football games. You could look bad for 3.5 quarters, but if the other team doesn't put you away, maybe you squeak one out. But that wasn't this game. So this is when the game is essentially over. We have a chance to tie. And this is the one. Yeah, this is when we get an incomplete to Tracy. That's around midfield. Looks like it's a fumble possibly, but it really wasn't incomplete. There really isn't much to say about this drive. We attempted a couple of big throws. We do get a big one to Neighbors, big one for about 13. But then Russ again keeps getting in trouble. He has a big run. Yeah, let me gather my thoughts here on this drive. We do get it's one of those drives where it starts and then it stalls. We get to throw the Neighbors for about 13. Russ picks up a big run on the play breakdown. So again, Russ's legs, I mean, again, this isn't like, 2013 Russ, but it is a guy who, if the play breaks down, he could pick up some yards for you. Throw away 6 yards to Tracy, then the incomplete to Tracy. We have to punt. So we have a chance, and again, the offense stalls and we do nothing. And then this really was Washington finally finished us. And, this is one where, again, Daniels gets a big run for 15 early in the drive. At midfield, Burns gets to Daniels. It's not a sack, but there's a holding penalty on Washington. So it looked like a good defensive stop by us. They got in trouble. They held us, and now they're 2nd and 16, 2nd and 17, something like that. I'm not feeling confident at all. It's like funny, you're watching this game, and every time it's like 2nd and 16, third and 15, you're not feeling like the Giants are going to get a stop. At least I'm not. Like, I know, again, it's just one of those games where Washington had only scored 14 points, but they still looked like they were carving us up offensively. And then, of course, Daniels gets a designed run, 11 yards. Then there's too much time, 3rd and 5 at around midfield. Big first down to Deebo Samuel up the seam. And that really felt like they had finished us. It was like, okay, like that's it. We're really running out of time here. They get a big first down, and now they're in our territory. But again, it's football. A couple of things go the right way. There's a drop by Deebo Samuels. There's an offsides penalty. It's 2nd and 15. The next killer. There's the next killer. Eckler gets the ball in the backfield, and then our defense is unable to tackle. We whiff on a bunch of tackles, and then he breaks a bunch. And then they more or less finish us with the end around to Deebo Samuels for the touchdown. And it's a 2-score game with only 7 minutes left. And with other football teams, maybe you have a shot. Realistically, we have no shot at this point. But you'd still like to, it's the first week of the season. You'd like to end on a bit of a positive note. And so you would like this drive to go well. It would feel a little bit nicer if this ends on a touchdown. And it got close, but it was again, it ends up being more of the same. So again, Russell Wilson, he picks up some yards on the ground. 3rd and 6. There's Giants penalty. We hit a wide open Wan'Dale Robinson on 3rd and 6. Sorry, after a Giants penalty. So we get it to about 3rd and 1. Giants penalty backs us up a little bit. All right, this may be our last chance. We don't really have a chance. And then we hit Wan'Dale Robinson up the sideline. He's wide open. And it looked to me like he had space ahead of him. And either it was the throw or Wan'Dale, like he falls to the ground. And, he had so much of an opportunity to run with space ahead of him. I mean, it was still a big gain, a big yarder. We had opportunities. But, this looks like a team that's not going to score much in the red zone. So you need that 50-yard play and run it in. But at the 32-yard line, we get a shuffle pass to Tracy, gets it 4th and 2nd. And then Wilson throws a pick, it looks like. But again, like even till the bitter end, Washington bails us out. Roughing the passer penalty. The clock is ticking. It's about like 3:30 left. And again, if you're really optimistic and you really want to hold on to hope, it's like, it's 3:30 left. We got 3 timeouts. They got no. Maybe we could stop them, get a few timeouts. But the clock is ticking. We get it to the 19-yard line. And then we have a big throw to Bellinger. And I see that play, and I'm like, oh, Theo Johnson caught it. And then they said Bellinger. So it was a nice throw to Bellinger. I'm like, all right, where's Bellinger been this game? So we get it to 1st and goal, and it's the same story. There's a throwaway, ball is batted down. There's a miss to Neighbors in the corner, incompletion to Robinson, who really, didn't really have a chance at the ball. And that was it. That was the game. And again, a lot of it's more of the same. So, some of the takeaways? Defensively, I'm not panicking yet. It didn't look good. And I know the points to score doesn't reflect how kind of weak the defense looked. I wish we had someone more creative defensively. But in the end, they didn't give up too many points, so maybe it's a little hard to criticize. I'm not ready to panic yet because I think as Giants fans, especially with what, if we weren't looking too closely at Washington, we just saw the games they played against us. Maybe we're thinking, maybe this is a bit of a regression year for Washington. Maybe they're not, all that, but maybe they are, and maybe they're really good offensively. Maybe the pass rush is going to come with time. Maybe there's some more opportunities. I know Washington, bulked up their defensive line a bit more, but it if it wasn't the same old that we've seen for the last 10 years, where, Russell Wilson looked a lot like Daniel Jones today. And I don't mean that as an insult. What Daniel Jones is being up against has been what Giants quarterbacks have been up against since like 2012, 2013. When we're drafting guys like Eric Flowers, and he turns out to be nothing for us, and Evan Neal, and he turns out to be nothing for us. And this entire offensive line seems entirely dependent on one person that Dave Gettleman drafted years ago. And we keep prioritizing the offensive line, and it never seems to get anywhere. So in the way I say that Russell Wilson looked a lot like Daniel Jones, he looks like a guy whose clock is rushed. And the same thing happened to Eli Manning towards the end of his career. And Grant, look, I'm an Eli Manning fan. Maybe that's why I'm inclined to defend him. But I saw what he was up against at the last portion of his career, and he was constantly under duress. His internal clock looked rushed. Same thing happened with Daniel Jones. And we had some key drops early in the game as well. And so it was a lot of the same old. Not much time for plays to develop, key drops, and a complete inability to get tough yardage. And I think really ultimately that's the story of this game. There was no tough yardage that we got. And what are you going to do? And that's like, that's essential to football. What do you do on 3rd and 1? What do you do on 4th and 1? And so many games are going to be won and lost on that. And as you watch this game, like I said, it looked like at one point Brian Daboll just threw up his hands and said, yeah, you know what? 4th and 2 at the goal line, we're not going to get it. Just kick a field goal. And it frustrated me at the time, but essentially, he was probably right. And the hope is that maybe that's just a really good, Washington defensive line. But as every Giants fan knows, we're going to be up against good football teams. And, at some point, if you want to be a good football team, you got to beat good football teams. And yeah, we didn't give up sacks. I don't really remember a sack. There might have been, and I make a note of a sack. I don't recall, but it didn't look like Russ had much time. And the same stuff we saw from Russ, where he looked like he had to rush a throw, or he looked like he had to get himself out of trouble and, get a few yards. It's the same thing we saw. And, I think, preseason is preseason. It doesn't mean anything in a lot of ways. I don't think it means nothing, but I think some Giants fans, and maybe including myself, were like, oh, we put up 30 each game. Maybe it doesn't mean we're going to win a ton. Maybe it doesn't mean we're going to have a high octane offense, but look, it's better than putting up 12 each game. And so maybe there's something here. Maybe there's an opportunity for the offense to have life. But I think it really, really, really looked like a lot more of the same. And it looked like Daniel Jones, but with Russell Wilson back there. And again, this is not an insult from my standpoint to either quarterback. I think Russell Wilson did the best that he could do. I think he played a good football game, and he worked with what he had. A kind of a side tangent, this whole idea, like people talking about Russell Wilson, like maybe he's a borderline Hall of Famer. I'm sorry, that's insane. This guy has been a pro for many years. I think like 9 Pro Bowls in a row, was maybe a top 5 quarterback for most of those years, had multiple 100-yard passer rating seasons, in addition to his ability to run. It's not putting Russell Wilson in the Hall of Fame. You may as well take the Hall of Fame away from Steve Young then, who didn't have an incredibly long body of work. But Steve Young at his best is some of the best quarterbacking I've ever seen. And Russell Wilson, I think he's right up there. And and is he that same guy now? No, but he's a pro, and he looked like a pro out there on a team that, I think one of the things, in sports, people like to, they like the headline, and they like to, to boil it down to one person, one guy. And yeah, the quarterback's an important position, but quarterback play is important. And you can only have good quarterback play if you have the right pieces around you. And, that offensive line just did not look good. Drops by Theo Johnson at inopportune times. I won't say that's the reason we lost, but when the margin for error is so slim, then you've got to you can't have those moments. So couple of key drives, 2 or 3 key drives, and we had to get touchdowns on at least 2 of them. And we got touchdowns on none of them. Defensively, again, I don't want to panic yet, but it really doesn't look that good. It doesn't look that good, but that could change. I go back. I remember after 2007, the first 2 games against Dallas and then Green Bay, I was like, this is an awful defense. And obviously, by the end of the year, we win the Super Bowl on an incredible defensive front and great defensive coordinating by Spags. I'm not saying that's going to be this. I'm not comparing this Giants team to a team that won the Super Bowl, but I'm not ready to say that the defense is awful yet. Hopefully, again, we don't have a defensive coordinator like Spags, unfortunately. Bowen is who he is. Again, I'm not enough of an analyst to tell you what he's doing right or doing wrong, but it all looks kind of safe. It all looks kind of boring. It all looks kind of, pretty uncreative. And I'm concerned that, again, it's only week 1, but for a guy that wanted to wear Lawrence Taylor's number, we didn't hear Abdul Carter's name hardly at all. These things can come in waves, sacks, things like that. Michael Strahan broke the sack record, and the first 2 games he didn't get any sack. So that's why I'm not going to panic too much about the defense, because it could become dangerous. We'll see. But offensively, it just looked too much like a repeat of what we've been seeing for 10 or 15 years. And one of the reasons, I tried to do this, like doing some kind of podcast, several years ago. I think it was during the McAdoo era. I just found myself saying the same stuff. And I didn't want to go, and constantly say, well, the line stinks, like whatever. What else are you going to say? Our line, quote unquote, looks better, and it's bad. And again, I think the big story in this game, I'm rambling a bit, but the big story in this game to me, Washington made a lot of mistakes, kept us in it, looked like week 1 football for them. For us, it just looked like bad football. It just didn't look like good football. It didn't look like a team that was rusty, because they're just starting the season and they look like they're in preseason form. It looks like a team that is weak up front in terms of the offensive line, and in key moments, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, they're not going to be able to get it done. So I think that this is a good stopping point for me, because I'm just going to be repeating myself at this point. That's all I have to say about that. Dallas, hopefully part of it is we just played a really, really good football team. This was a team in the NFC Championship game. Maybe this really is a team. A lot of people are down on Washington. Maybe Washington is going to be a good football team, and maybe we have some better success against Dallas. I don't know that we will. And we'll do the really quick. We'll do the Jackson Dart thing. They said it in the broadcast, and I think they're right. I think we're in a position where Giants fans are going to want Jackson Dart, and I'm kind of one of them. Like if I'd like to see it, maybe it's more crisp, but it'd certainly be more fun as a Giants fan, watching, a bit of a washed up Russell Wilson, on a bad team, like if we stay bad, we'll feel stale. Like if we're winning games, cool. And again, I've always been a big fan of Russ. I was hopeful we'd get him years ago. So I'm not an anti-Russ guy, but I could see the desire to bring in Jackson Dart. But would he have been better? Like, I don't know. I have no way of knowing. I'd imagine that Daboll wants to put him in. And if he thinks that Jackson Dart gives us a better chance to win, he will put him in. I'm guessing he doesn't think he gives us a better chance to win right now. And as much juice as Jackson appeared to have in the preseason, if Jackson is put in the same position that Russ was put in today, do we think a rookie is going to do any better than the veteran Russ? I don't think so. And it's not like it's not like Jackson is like Lamar Jackson back there, where you just say, well, he's just gonna beat you with his legs so much that might overcompensate for our bad line. Like he's a solid runner. I think he's better than we might have thought he would be, but it's not so great where we say, well, he's such a difference maker that he's gonna come in, even though he's not a veteran like Russ. Maybe he gives us some juice with his legs. So I think, unfortunately, the position we're put in is, we'd like to see him get in, because if it's going to be a lost season, we may as well build up Jackson Dart and get him ready for, who knows, maybe next year. But we're in a position where, like, this team might not be good enough that he just doesn't look as good as we saw in the preseason. And it may not be Jackson's fault. It may we're just putting him in a bad position. And do we want to put Jackson Dart in a bad position? Do we want to put someone in position to fail? And then the other problem that we have is this is not the first year for Brian Daboll. I don't know what John Mara is thinking, but I feel like if you were going to re-up these guys, you needed to give them at least 2 years, and I don't know if they're going to get it. So if Jackson Dart comes in, he has a bad rookie season, and whatever, Peyton Manning threw the most interceptions of anyone in the league, and kind of had a bad rookie season. That's fine. But Eli Manning had a bad rookie season. If this goes bad, do we stay the course and bring Jackson Dart and bring Brian Daboll and bring Joe Schoen back next year? And that would be a lot of patience. Right. And so it's unfortunate, because I really think it puts Jackson Dart in a really bad position right now, because you either throw him in on a team that, again, the line did not look good. And then you'll have him, the teams coming up, Kansas City, yeah, they lost to the Chargers, but they still have a good defense. Philly a couple of times, Denver. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, because you might not have the team around Jackson for him to look good. And if this thing goes off rails, like, are you really, what I'm getting at is, are you really building him for the future? And at the same time, you see coaches in this position where, like, this is their last hope is putting in the new quarterback and then, maybe getting a chance for next year. Does Mara have that kind of patience? And should he? I don't know if he should. Excuse me. One of the toughest things for this team, that successful season we had in Brian Daboll's first year, it was might have been one of the worst things that happened to him and Joe Schoen, because a lot of that success came off of the guys that Gettleman brought in, and we sort of went halfway, where we kept some of that team, we broke some of that team up, and it was going to be hard to rebuild after we had a taste of some success and a big playoff win. And so we didn't do the full rebuild, and we stalled. And then Daboll and Schoen never really had a chance to do the full rebuild. And this season feels like that, but they're in like year 4. And coaches don't get a lot of opportunities to do a full rebuild in year 4. And do they get a year 5? And what does that mean for Jackson Dart? And is it worth throwing him in there? And, I've looked at the schedule. There's really, a lot of Giants fans know there's no part of the schedule that looks like, oh, let's drop Jackson Dart in now. It'll be in a losing season like this looks like it could be, at least just based off of game 1 and the way the line looked again. As Giants fans, I think seeing a Jackson Dart would give us some life, but would that just destroy his development? And is he going to get a chance next year? I don't know. I don't know how consistent I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to do this at least after every game. But as I have thoughts about the Giants, as I've always had for many times in my life, I might just put the microphone down, put up a camera, and do this. So anyone who watched, I don't expect any viewers whatsoever. That's just how this works when you're starting out. But anyone who did, thanks for watching, and we'll keep doing this. And if I'm obligated to watch this team for the rest of my life, and if they're going to be losing, I may as well do this. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully next week against Dallas, it goes better.